right, and Jeremy, we are ready for you to call the meeting to order.
That's great. I hereby call this final meeting of the Hood River County Transportation District Budget Committee meeting to order at 4:16. My apologies for being late. Tia, can you please take roll call? Oh,
Sorry,
shoot.
I'll go ahead and do it today. So, Chair Jeremy Hull,
Yeah, I'm here.
Daryl Roberts,
Here.
Laura Dunn,
Here.
Greg Pack,
Here.
Bridget Bailey,
Here.
Cindy Walbridge.
Here.
All right. Go ahead, Jeremy.
All right. Minutes were included in the packet. Are there any changes that need to be made? Anybody? No?
Nope. Not on
Can I
my
get a
part.
motion to approve the minutes?
I will make that motion. This is Greg.
Thank you, Greg. Second,
This is Bridget. I'll second.
any changes they want us to consider? No, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
None, all opposed? All right, sounds like they are approved.
And chair votes? Aye.
Yes, approved.
Okay, great.
Sorry, I'm taking this from my phone, as you can tell.
We appreciate it.
Go to step 3, is that right, Amy?
Yes, sir.
All right, you should receive the memo regarding the automated fare technology and passenger options in your packets. Any comments, questions or staff concerns?
I do have questions.
Okay.
This is Daryl.
Yes, sir.
Have you considered using a statistical analysis system, or is that something like what we're already doing?
I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time going back into my college days for the definition of statistical analysis. Are you meaning just doing it based on statistics,
So-
not taking each individual number?
Yeah, this is something I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who was the chief financial officer at Whatcom Transit until 4 years ago.
Oh,
And he said that they used this kind of a system where they randomly choose routes to take passenger counts on random days. And it can be done. The Federal Transit Association will approve it if it's set up in the right way. I don't know if apparently you haven't considered that option in any way.
no, to be honest, I
And
didn't know that was even an option.
well, it probably still is. But anyway, that's one thing we could consider. And another thing I wanted to know is, have you chosen a system yet, or are you still just looking at different systems?
No, I'm still looking at different systems. I have reached out to Smart in Wilsonville, which is a little larger than us, to be able to kind of pick their brains more, because they did a similar project not too long ago. I wasn't able to set up a meeting with them before this meeting, but it sounds like it has helped overall with just their system planning and their service planning. But if this was something that you guys wanted us to look more into, then that is something that I would do. I would be calling these different systems and doing more interviews to understand what works well and what doesn't, what is the different technology they're using, and then also just doing additional research to see all the different things that are out there. Because there's a lot of systems that exist, and it's if we did decide to go this fast, we do a much more exhaustive research before we decided on one.
Yeah,
then-
that's,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
that's one of the things that he impressed upon me is that there's a lot of different systems and each has their own pluses and minuses, of course, but he did give me some ideas of what some of the potential problems are with some of the different systems. But I guess we need to decide first whether we even want to go forward with that or not.
Yeah, I guess my comments would be, I appreciate staff doing exactly what we asked. You went back and answered those questions, put it in a written format to be able to do it. What I was looking for was kind of, return on investment and staff time. I know that question was asked. It was shown there, but it doesn't, it's really just diverting time to a different thing. We showed numbers for the drivers, but we're really not going to reduce any expenses on the drivers. It's just, right. It's merely how much time they spend on it and what's that value, but there's no savings there. Same with
Excuse
dispatch.
me.
There may be some management, savings there as far as reporting and getting some timely reports. And I'm all about providing the right tools, for the team to do a good job. But to me, overall, the expense for $100,000 system that, again, on the grant side, it doesn't necessarily guarantee we get grants, or I know it's a factor, but not a major factor. To go out and spend that money on the size of transportation district we are, where I understand where some of the efficiencies could be gained on routes and some other stuff to get us that data, it just doesn't seem to me like we're there yet. I think you did a good job of going out and providing those answers. It just wasn't a compelling argument for me to say, oh yes, we should have this system. We got to have it.
Mr. Chair.
Bridget, go ahead, just in case it might be difficult for Jeremy to answer.
Yeah, so I'd like the group to examine these numbers a little more with me. I did have the opportunity to take the CAT since our last meeting, and I experienced what goes on with the driver to count at this time. They had to make another call or radio call and report that 2 riders got on board. So my question to staff is, this estimate of $72,000, is that 30 minutes a day when they're behind the wheel? Or do they go back and then do something to give you your ridership number?
So that 30 minutes is a very, very conservative amount. So what you experience, Bridget, is what they do every time essentially they go to a stop. So that 30 minutes is included within their day. And it really, when I talked to Ty, he said it's probably closer to an hour. But I wanted to be pretty conservative with that number.
So when they get back to, when they end their route, there's not additional paperwork. It's going to happen by him or her, or the driver, contacting dispatch, reporting the numbers, and then dispatch is doing something with those numbers.
So there is additional work for the driver when they get back. So, and
Okay.
it's minuscule time, but it does add up. So like.
And they're paid by the hour?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to urge support of this technology, because we have such small numbers of, and I believe that being able to show the actual ridership will really benefit us, bringing in additional federal dollars. I'm confident of that. The staff has shown us that just the drivers alone, although I was on the bus and experienced that dispatch was interrupted, we had to hold, they couldn't pick up, they held, then we finally departed from the Dalles. So my reading is that we're going to experience a savings of almost the cost of the system in year number 1. And that doesn't even include the federal money that's standing out there waiting for us to grab. So, hey, Rural Wood River, let's go get the money.
Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. I found the argument very persuasive too, that having the most accurate numbers will help us make better decisions about route planning and making our routes as efficient as possible, adding more service when more is needed, and maybe reducing some of our runs that are less well used. I think that will save us in the long run and help our ridership grow more as well.
It did delay my bus from leaving its spot. It also, I had my CAT pass ready, and I think all of you have a pass. I also had, was ready to update any technology on my phone to do the count. I wasn't holding anything in my hands. I was just ready to help the driver. And he could not receive either type of communication about the fact that I was getting on the bus.
So I think another thing to note too is I was just talking to our regional, our ODOT regional transit coordinator, Valerie Egon, today. And she said, so SMART, the example that I gave earlier and that I included in the memo, they used stiff discretionary funds in order to pay for their system. And there is a new application that will be, the information is coming out later this summer, but the application itself is due in January. So another thing that we could do is, if you feel comfortable with moving forward with approving the 100,000 that we can put in the budget for reserve funds, that would only be if we can't identify other funds that we could use for this. So we could approve it if you want to, with the intent that staff, myself, applies for the stiff discretionary fund or maybe other grants that pop up that I could use instead for this technology. So that is one thing we could do as well.
And just to be clear, so we're reading the numbers right.
Yeah.
I know Bridget mentioned that there'd be savings, it'd be a payback. The way I read your numbers were that was just time spent and you're showing value for the time. If we had the system, it's not like it's going to save $72,000 of driver time. It's just.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Greg, because it takes them a half an hour when they get back to the bus parking place to do their paperwork.
Sorry, Bridget. So just to clarify, so that's a half hour that I put in there. That includes their driving time and then also a little bit of time when they're actually at the district. So Greg is accurate in when he says that we most likely won't see actual staff or salary reduction with implementing this. What it would do instead is it would allow us to use our time more efficiently. So for example, the drivers, if they'd be focusing on the safety and driving rather than multitasking. For myself, instead of spending this time, I would be potentially looking for other grants, or I would be dealing with HR issues, or, you know, not that I wouldn't already be doing those things, but I would be able to divide my time maybe a little bit more equally.
No, I understand. I just want to make sure we were clear so I did read it correctly.
What's
You are correct.
So you're going to still have the bus drivers with the same hours, even if you implement this. You're not going to be able to have them get in and clock out.
No, so I mean, there might be some minuscule time savings, so they might be able to clock out 5 to 10 minutes earlier, because sometimes they'll have to come back and they will talk to the dispatch about you know, different issues with their ridership, or the dispatchers are going to pull them in at the beginning of their shift and asking them about, you know, the previous day's ridership and X, Y, and Z. So that could be reduced, but I think overall, it's not necessarily, you're not necessarily going to be seeing a salary wage decrease. It's just going to be probably a more efficient use of time.
Okay, so if we approve this, we're more interested in creating a potential increase in funding and possibly a more safe, timely drive.
I would say if you approve this, probably the benefits of this are going to be being able to make smarter system service decisions and make our rides more efficient. and then more efficient use of staff time, and the ability to potentially secure more funding, but that it's not necessary. It's hard to quantify that data. I saw Daryl's hand up first.
Amy, what's the possibility of us approving a lesser amount, say half, with the stipulation that you guys would come up with the rest of the money from grants? Or if that doesn't happen, then maybe we include the other half in the following year's budget.
Yeah, I think that is totally within your call.
Because I do agree with Greg. That's a heck of a lot of money to get just more data. And I understand why we need it, but with the deficit that will already be operating at next year, I really hesitate to throw in another 100,000 at this point.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Cindy, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So if I understand what Bridget was saying correctly, that when you were on the bus, Bridget, you got on and there was some manipulation of some paperwork or something that still had to occur by the bus driver before you took off.
Yeah, to be clear, what happened was the bus driver pulled up and got us in our seats. He reminded us that we have to wear our seatbelts because I didn't know we had to wear our seatbelts, so I didn't have my seatbelt on. And then he called a radio and said 2 riders on at X. And I'm not sure who that was, but I think with 1 or 2 people jumping on the bus, it's probably no big deal. But had there been people getting off and getting back on, I think there's a possibility that there would be riders missed.
Okay. So what I was thinking when she was talking earlier is that CAT really is still out here in our communities trying to sell themselves, and anything they can do to further the ride for the rider, to welcome them aboard, to be opening, to be, let me help you do something, is really going to help CAT in the long run. And if technology is going to help the driver be not distracted or be able to spend time with somebody, I think that's important.
The other thing that I thought was a little bit odd was it's maybe because of what they have to use to keep the drivers safe during COVID, but I'm not really sure if I hadn't had a pass, what the driver would have done to verify that I'd paid, and how that is automated or not. Can somebody comment on that, on what happens when you get on the bus if you don't have a pass?
So if you don't have a pass and just to clarify too, Bridget, you took the Dalles Link bus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify for budget members, our community members, CAT contracts with the Link to provide the Dalles service on the weekdays. So Bridget, they should have a fare box on their vehicles. Are you saying that they didn't have a fare box?
You know, I don't know, because myself and the other rider had a pass.
Okay, so they should have a fare box on each of the buses. And so if somebody has cash, then the rider puts the cash into the box. And us as transit agencies have been trained to not necessarily be like, are you sure you put in the exact amount? As the belief is that if they put it in, the intent is that they put in the right amount.
Okay. I just wasn't sure what else they have to handle right there with people getting on while they're also counting.
Correct. So it's mostly the counting. It's the, welcoming riders on, making sure they know where they're going, so that they can stop appropriately. If there's bicyclists that get on the bus, then they have to get out and to help the bicyclist. So there can be potentially a lot of things happening, but I think the biggest thing there is that there's the potential for drivers accidentally missing riders, right? And then so if they leave and they start driving, then it's like, oh, I forgot to do this. So they're thinking about something else rather than driving in that situation. Which in theory is what we're trying to go away from.
And
So
I don't know if Cindy still has her hand up or she's ready to talk next or.
Oh, no, if I don't, sorry, am I
Okay.
supposed to take my hand away? I thought
I do like Daryl's suggestion with reducing the ask and going for grant money to do it. And I'm glad you mentioned there's grant money available to be able to do that. That changes my perspective a little bit from the big ask, but I do like that tactic.
okay. Yeah, and so, and in theory, like with this type of program, there's going to be a large amount of research that would need to be done to make sure that we're going with the right program, that it's really going to integrate well with everything that we have, and that the user interface is what we want. So I think realistically, the fact that we're going to get these applications come at the end of summer, so we'll really understand what's out there. We can build that application and be able to submit it for that January time period. I don't think we would be able to get a project of this undertaking done and completed by January. So I think if we plan with the goal of maybe have some of those funds right in the budget to potentially move forward, but have the goal that we're looking for these funds. And if we receive them, then we can include them in a supplemental budget.
So Amy, you didn't put any budgeted funds in the budget we're looking at now, the draft one that included this 100,000?
I did not, because it wasn't in the original proposed one, and I wanted to make sure that was something that you felt comfortable with.
Okay, so if we're reading the room right, it's put another 50,000 in there, and then go for grant funding and run its course and go look and investigate systems and then come back for a supplementary budget change, correct?
Yes. So just to, again, sorry to clarify and put in Amy speak. So the 50,000, the proposal on the table is that there's $50,000 approved. Is that going to be, there has to be grant funding in order for us to use that funding, or it's with the intent that we look for grant funding and we can use that potentially for match money or whatever?
Well, my proposal would be that anything over that 50,000 has to come from grant money or be approved in a supplemental budget after the first half of the year has expired.
Okay, so we could add $50,000 for this fare technology, or for the automated passenger counters and fare technology, and then anything additional would be covered by a grant. Is that correct?
Yes.
Greg, is that something you feel comfortable?
Yeah, I'd support that for sure. I know Bridget has her hand up. Looks like she wants to.
I would support that as well.
Okay.
Bridget, did you have another?
Bridget, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair, I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Is it Jeremy? I'm asking to have the floor.
Yeah, go ahead, Bridget.
I hear management and I hear support for this to be budgeted at 100,000. The reason is that they need to get going on it. If we wait until they get some other grant funded, we will miss this year. So my proposal would be to direct management to fund with an outside grant, but to provide them with the operating money to get going now. Otherwise, you can't count your riders accurately. So our management has reported that they see some potential STIF funds. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of how quickly those can come around. I'm not aware of how quickly any government grant can come around. In my experience, it's very slow, but I've never applied in the area of transportation. So could somebody comment on that? I mean, really, if we are going to do this, let's put it in the budget and direct management to seek a grant for the amount.
Yeah, so so the stiff discretionary is actually a fairly quick turnaround. So it's, the application would be in January, and then we would have the funds available to us that July.
This year.
Sorry, no, July of 2023. So
Oh, okay, so that's like not having them for a whole year, Amy. That isn't actually very helpful.
so it, I mean, there's different ways.
Get your riders counted.
Yeah, so there's different ways you can look at that addition, that original 50,000, that could actually potentially get us started with the fair technology. And then we could reserve the grant funds for the automated passenger counters. Does that make sense? So we could potentially do it in a two-step process. So we could do, so the way that my brain is thinking about it, we can do research and understanding of what the different expenses really are going to be from now until, December, which we, in January, will make our application for the stiff discretionary. And then from that time point, we can start implementing the automated fare technology while we're waiting to hear back about the grant, and then just make sure that any money that we spend would be integrated if we were awarded that grant. Now, the tricky part with that would be that if we were not awarded that grant, then how we move forward from there. And then
Well-
maybe go ahead, Daryl.
Well, that's where I would say you come back with a supplemental budget and request the additional funds then.
Okay.
How much money can you get from STIP?
So, I mean, we would want to be strategic with our ask, because there's two pots of money. There's the stiff discretionary, and then there's the stiff intercommunity fund. The stiff intercommunity fund is the fund that we asked for money for our Columbia Gorge Express. And so we would just want to be strategic to make sure that we're not potentially taking away from that request. And then the stiff discretionary funds, which is a different bucket, which is what we would apply for funds for this project. I did talk again to Valerie kind of about what her thoughts were. And she said that more than likely there are going to be more funds than the last biennium available. So this is probably the year to ask for things. But I think it's just, we would need to make sure that we have a plan in place, and everybody on board with the understanding of, this is the direction that we want to go. And if we don't get that funding, be okay with those additional, coming back to the board and asking for additional funds.
Right.
Amy, I'm sorry, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Could you talk about what you see as the potential costs or liabilities of getting only half the amount at this time as compared to the full amount?
So I think the main thing is just if we don't receive funding from a grant, because we could potentially be left with half of a system, right? We're putting the money in place for new technology. But if that serves a certain purpose, but to get its full potential, you need this other piece. And that would be the piece that, we would be asking for grant funding for. And if we don't get that piece, then you've invested in a system and you're not getting kind of all the benefits because you don't have that other half.
And-
So that would be my worry.
That's where you could come back and we could fund it
Yes.
later, but that would just delay your ability to get the benefit of it, right?
It could potentially. I'm not sure if it would necessarily ultimately delay us that much, because we could just bring it to the board and we could have them approve it.
And
Okay.
Laura, I
If-
think that's a great question. There is the APC, the automated passenger counter, and then the automated fare technology, AFT, whatever you want to call it. Would those be from two different providers, or is there one system that does both and you're trying to investigate that?
So that's what we need to investigate. And anything that I would move forward with, I would make sure that it integrated with the other system that I wanted before I move forward, and make sure that has some flexibility in it. So if we went with the AFTs first, right? I would research that pretty exhaustively and make sure that anything I get would integrate with whatever the APCs that I was looking at getting.
So Amy, real quickly, just to clarify, even if we had, even if we permitted the $100,000 spend through the budget process, you're saying at previous comment you made, you still wouldn't be able to objectively get it installed in a faster timeline if we had than just going through the grant process. Is that correct?
Well, we would most likely, and I'd have to just double check because it depends on the amount of the capital budget, but if it means that there's going to be a higher than 10%, we would have to do a supplemental budget. So it would be a process. We would have to do this process again. And then I think my worry would be is if we do that, then we potentially might have to do another supplemental budget closer to the end of the fiscal year. Teresa, or sorry, Tia, were you thinking? Did you have a question?
I guess what I'm asking is if we granted the $100,000 now, you could have it installed faster than if we, in a more expedited fashion than if we did a potential supplemental budget, if we needed to?
Yes, nuts and
Yeah.
bolts, yes. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of potential caveats to that, but yes.
And like what kind of time frame? Like, because I do think I think there's a consumer experience element here, and also just an evolution of an organization that should be doing things automatedly versus hand counting.
Yep.
But I also want to also find a happy medium of accessing other grants if we can to offset this. I also think that, you know, the organization should have a kiddie fund, so to speak, but it doesn't need to sit there forever. I think we need to spend some things down for the infrastructure, for the betterment of infrastructure. I think that's something we should consider as well. So I'm just trying to figure out how quickly, to get my earlier question, how quickly could it install versus if we went through the budgetary process or an supplementary budgetary process?
So I think if you approve this today and we started the process tomorrow, I think realistically, probably having everything installed, you're still looking at probably February and March. Because we are working on installing the digital signs. Sorry. And there's a couple of other infrastructure projects that we're still kind of and there's the bus stops too. So I think realistically, even if we approve it today, I think it would definitely be faster. But if you approved it tomorrow, it still probably wouldn't be until February, March until we had everything done.
And then another question is, if we approved it, would that prevent you from going to search out additional grants?
Nope.
Okay, so you could do that irregardless. And
Yes.
would do that irregardless.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I would much, that would be my goal, is to use grant funds. I do think if there's a way to spend down reserve funds, the smart way to do it is to do it on capital, and do it on capital that's going to last for a long time.
Yeah.
That's going to be your best investment. But if I have the option to get grant funds, that's what I'm going to do. Laura, you had your hand up.
And I just want to be sure that I heard you correctly, that I know this is an unknown, but sounds like from what you've heard, the prospects for getting those grants may be better if you can, maybe better this year than next year. Is that, would getting the money now allow you to apply for those grants sooner?
So I think having that money that'll give us a lot more flexibility, because we would already kind of have the funds for match funds. It wouldn't necessarily allow us to say, if you guys approve that funds, it's not necessarily going to mean that we have a better chance of getting those grants. But this is kind of the year to formulate what we want to ask for grants, because this is these grant applications are going to be for the next biennium. So we apply for grants for every 2 years. So after this next grant round fund, we'll have to wait 2 years.
So you would be able to apply on the same timeline for those grants on the same timeline, whether we approve the half the amount now or the full amount now.
Yeah, I think what if you approved, at least half the amount, I would have the ability to maybe get started on some of those pieces to reduce staff workload where I could, depending on what the technology is that I found. Then it would also kind of set us up in line where we have all that research done and all that information compiled for that application to make sure that our application is as strong as it could possibly be.
So I guess my thought is I think if we're reading the room, it feels like everybody feels, or most people feel confident that this is work that needs to be done. And if we approved it, and Amy's still going to go after the grants, we have the potential just to reduce what we spend internally, and potentially reduce another step in the process of having to go after a supplemental budget. So
Right.
she can go access it anyway. Does anybody disagree with that comment? Or I guess I open it for.
I agree with you, Jeremy.
Okay. Any more
Well,
discussion?
I'm supportive of budget, where this is the budget committee, I'm supportive of recommending the 100,000 and with a direction that management seek a grant for the highest percentage possible of the 100,000. Do I have support for that?
Why don't you make it a motion? Somebody want to make a motion on directing management to the budget committee to grant $100,000 to support the work that needs to be done?
Yes, this is Bridget Bailey, and I'm on a budget committee. And my motion is to recommend 100,000 to be budgeted for this. What should we name this, Jeremy? What's this project?
Go ahead, Amy.
Automated passenger counter and fare technology.
Okay, my motion is to support budgeting up to 100,000 for automated technology in an effort to secure federal funding and to have CAT be technologically competitive.
I'm just gonna,
With the same motion is a direction that the staff will seek up to 100% of this $100,000 from outside grant resources.
do you mind if I just condense that a little bit, Bridget?
Go ahead.
So, a motion to recommend for automated passenger counter and fare technology with the stipulation that staff looks to or applies for grant funding to potentially cover this instead. Is that?
That works.
I want to make sure that the board understands that we're trying to get some data to secure more federal funding.
I understand that.
Oh,
Yeah, I
Daryl,
understand that.
Yeah.
So
Why don't you, if you could, Bridget, could you restate the motion again, and then we'll vote on it, I think is what we want to do.
Okay, I move that we budget 100,000 for ridership technology with the understanding that the staff will seek up to 100% of outside funding available. The purpose
All in
of this,
favor?
the purpose of this motion is to seek additional federal funds by
Mhm.
getting accurate ridership counts.
Mhm. I'll
Okay.
second the emotion. The motion.
Yep, thank you. And all in favor, say aye.
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 All against, say nay.
Nay.
Nay,
So I'm sorry, just to clarify, were you saying that there's $100,000 that can be used even if we don't receive the funding?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, so there was 4 ayes and 2 nays, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So I believe that motion passes.
Yeah.
Okay. Amy, I think we moved to step 4.
Yes.
Now is the opportunity for public comments regarding the 2022 and 2023 budgets. Anyone have any comments about the budget or issues pertaining to the budget? No, doesn't sound like it. Step 5, we are going to take the committee approval of the budget and tax rate one at a time. Please review the budget line items on LB 20. Let me know if you would like to make any changes. Is the committee ready to send this budget onto the board as their approved budget recommendation?
So first, let's go ahead and go through the LB 20. I just want to make sure we
Okay.
approved every specific piece. Does everybody have it in front of them, or would you like me to share it on my screen?
Have it.
Okay, and also the thing I did want to note, as I think it's important to note that as I was going through this LB 20 one more time, I did notice that the actual budget on fiscal year 21, when the LB 20 got filled out, there were a couple of things that were incorrect. It was just the money that was in QuickBooks, it didn't get transcribed exactly correct. So I did want to note that everything in the LB 20 that I sent out to you, that is accurate. The one that I included in your email today.
Just for confirmation, it says actual budget. Is it the actuals or is it the budget that was approved?
It was the actuals. So for some reason, I'm also not sure why it says actual budget, because that is confusing, but it's the actualized numbers.
Okay.
Okay, so we're looking at the fiscal year 23 proposed budget and the unencumbered reserve fund. So that would actually be down 100,000. Or no, from the start, that is correct. So the start is $1,238,056. The stiff dedicated project funds is 165,000. So the total reserve funds that we will be starting this year with is $1,403,056. So revenue, total available funds is, so this is all fair revenue, contract revenue, federal, state, local, and other revenue is $3,504,024. Any questions or concerns on that? Okay. All right, operating expense, $745,000 and $745,367. Are there any concerns or changes to be made to that number? Okay. All right, total administrative expense, $296,000 or $296,381. Is there any changes or concerns? Administrative personnel expense, it's $303,048. Any concerns with that? Okay. Direct service personnel is $1,422,655. Okay. And so the capital outlay, that is where that 100,000 would go. And just to confirm, Tia, the automated fare piece would go in there as well, right? Yes. Okay. The fare technology, so Unite. So I think, yes. I think that the $100,000 would go in the capital outlay, so that would make that 1 million.
$7,760.
760, yeah. So then that would mean our total expense would go to 3,775,211. And then our net income would go down to 271,187. And then the project available funds end of year would go down to 1,131,869. Okay. All right, is everybody good with those numbers? Okay. All right. So Jeremy, you can go ahead and move forward with the motion. Or asking for a motion.
Yeah, can I get a motion to approve this, the committee's recommendation to the board?
This is Bridget Bailey, and also move that the budget as stated is recommended to the full board.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that. This is Lara.
Does anybody have any changes they want to consider? All in favor? Say aye. Aye.
I,
Aye.
All opposed?
Sorry, did I hear Daryl too?
No,
Okay,
I'm a
right.
nay.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to.
All opposed?
Nay.
So, okay, sorry.
Just
So
to
it-
reiterate, Amy, I did vote in favor.
Okay,
I believe Daryl voted in against. So I'll let you do the
Yes.
count there.
is there any other discussion that you'd like to have, Daryl?
No, I'm just, if I'm a nay on the one thing, I gotta be a nay on the other too.
That's logical.
I thought of the same thing, Daryl, but this is a recommended committee to the board, correct? And we're still gonna have to vote as a board for this?
Correct.
But I'm not recommending it to the board.
Totally understand.
Sounds good. I think that passes. Tax rate. Staff is not making any recommendations to change the tax rate and is recommending the budget committee approve the tax rate of 0.0723 per 100,000
Sorry, just 1,000 per 1,000.
per 1,000, excuse me. Can I get someone to make a motion to approve the existing tax rate of what I think it was, what is 7 cents in 23, a little over 7 cents per 1,000?
723,
0.0723.
0723. I make a motion to approve it, 0.0723 per thousand.
This is Bridget, I'll second.
Does anyone have any changes they want us to consider?
I'd like
All
to
in-
throw in a free pass for anybody from Hood River County, but I don't think that's on the agenda. I just think that if people can have the experience, then they realize what we've got.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bridget. I agree.
Valid commissary. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes in favor. Passes. Unless there are any other issues or concerns, we can adjourn this meeting. Someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Okay. This is Bridget, I'll second.
I'm sorry, who made the original motion?
Greg,
Greg?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
thanks, everyone.
All opposed? Chair votes in favor. Motion passes.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jeremy,
so
for
much.
running it.
Thank you. Apologize for being late. And